in just 7 years, 24 rabbits had become more than 14,000 here at Barwon Park, Austin's home. And local landholders were beginning to complain bitterly that rabbits were taking over their pastoral properties and eating their crops.
I recently saw in the news that some animals around the world are causing absolute chaos, and they're not even supposed to be there. Apparently, these are called invasive species, and many originate from the US. That started me on the quest to find the most destructive, bizarre, and unstoppable invasive species in the world. Let's take a look at the top 20.
It's just one of those really nasty vines that literally grows almost a foot a day under proper conditions. One of the things that has kept kudzu in check in the past has been basically cold winters.
Number 20.
Pigs gone wild. Researchers found that Texas has the worst feral hog problem in the entire country. Wild hogs cause a lot of destruction, and researchers estimate around $2.5 billion in agricultural damage each year.
Feral hogs are a notorious bunch. No, I am serious. Whatever you have in mind, it is 10 times worse. I had a lot of strong opinions when I heard that they were considered the worst invasive species by people. But that was until I heard how problematic they ended up being for the countries they invaded. The animals were first introduced for hunting purposes, but what people didn't realize was that the feral hogs were adaptable. You see, they are omnivores. Neither plants nor animals are safe from this chaotic animal, not when they can gobble up an entire being. From birds and small mammals to amphibians and even deer fawns, the feral hogs can eat anything, but the plants have it far worse. The feral hogs like to do something called the rooting behavior, where they dig up the soil to eat seeds. This constant digging can wipe out entire farms in a single night. The United States alone has suffered over $2 billion worth of agricultural damage each year. That's not it either. I had no clue that feral hogs carry over 30 diseases and 40 parasites, most of them fatal to humans. Seeing the terror they are causing all around Canada, Brazil, Argentina, Australia, and even the US, I see why people have taken such dramatic measures against these animals. Some states of America use helicopters and drones to shoot at large groups of feral hogs. Others have decided to sterilize them to control their population. But nothing has quite exactly worked out, and their population continues to grow every day. While hogs are scary, nothing sets up a horror scene like rats. Number 19.
Like a scene out of a scary movie. Rats crawling in and out of a house, through the roof, through a hole in the foundation, a stench permeating the neighborhood. That nightmare is all too real, though, for some residents in Lakewood.
I don't think I need to tell you why this animal is one of the worst invasive species in the world, but I am still going to give you a little sneak peek. Rats found their way around the world through American and European ships. Ever since they found that route, it was like going to the moon for the rats. They found their way into every nook and corner of the world. It doesn't help that a single rat produces 2,000 babies in a year. So, within a year, you can infest a whole country with rats pretty easily. Plus, rats are one of the most stubborn species in the world. Most of them have become immune to many poisons. Plus, they are quick learners. That's probably why the rat in your house isn't getting caught in that trap. But you know what really shocked me? I didn't realize how destructive these little plague carriers were to the wildlife and humans. Rats have caused the extinction of over 20 species. That's no joke. That's the equivalent of world domination. Humans didn't get left behind in their mess, though. In the US alone, rats cause over $19 billion worth of damage annually. So rats weren't just invading lands, they came to take over. What's bizarre to me is that they were successful in their attempts. And to top it off, rats directly caused another species to invade. Here is how. Number 18. I might get a lot of hate for including stray cats here, but after what I heard, I had to put them in the list. Cats first started spreading through North America as a way to get rid of rats. I can't say if the plans of sending cats after rats worked out for humans, but what I do know is that this ended up sending cats to the most remote parts of the world. You see, cats are scary hunters. They will kill even when they are not hungry. This dark side of feral cats has caused tens of species to go extinct. The most common victims of the cats are birds. It is estimated that about 1.3 to 4 billion birds are killed each year in the United States alone by this apex predator. And that's just birds. The number of mammals is far worse. About 6 to 22 billion mammals fall into the deadly claws of cats every single year. Since they are such a nuisance, several countries have stepped up to control the feral cat population, especially when they see how fast they reproduce. Countries like Australia and New Zealand even got pressured into shooting and poisoning these cats. You know, I have always thought that cats had a mean streak to them. Now I know why. Talking of fast-growing species, let's talk about an unexpected invader that attacked the US. Number 17.
As we reported earlier this month, Asian carp, the fast-growing invasive species in lakes and rivers throughout the Mississippi Basin, have become a major issue in the Midwest, and officials are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to stop them from entering Lake Michigan.
I bet you didn't expect any fish to be here, but this animal surprised me just as much as you. There are many different carp species around the world, but the one that I'd like to talk about is the Asian carp. You have no idea how much panic the Asian carps have caused in the US. The Asian carp has spread faster and in massive numbers across the US, especially in the Mississippi River system. They are big feeders, gobbling up food equal to 40% of their body weight, threatening to starve the native fish populations. Boaters are not a big fan of them either, as the fish leaps out of the water to slap them. It doesn't help that they grow fast, too, with a single carp laying over 1 million eggs in a year. Right now, the Great Lakes of the US are under threat from these terrifying invaders. The authorities have put up electric fences to guard the native fish population in the Great Lakes. Whether that will work out or not is still up for debate. What do you think? Now let me show you some giant rodents causing havoc. Number 16.
Live teams are being deployed to battle a non-native species called Nutria. Nutria, originally from South America, were spotted in Central California about a year ago.
Nutria didn't come far from the United States. They were initially sent to the country as part of the fur trade, but when the industry started seeing its downfall, people released the Nutria into the wild. Big surprise, it was a huge mistake. You see, Nutria has the feeding habits of a toddler. They don't just stick to grazing. Instead, they feed on plants by ripping out the entire roots. This leads to a number of big problems: soil erosion, loss of land, and even loss of native plants. Louisiana alone has to deal with losing 100,000 acres of wetland every year. But they do not just create problems for the agricultural industry. Turns out they have some serious beef against infrastructure, digging up tunnels in random places and leaving the structure vulnerable to a dangerous fall. People have come up with weird ways to control the Nutria population. Some have put up a price on their heads, while others are trying to encourage people to eat Nutria. Would you eat one of these? Let me know in the comments. While you do that, check out this next species. Number 15. It is not a big surprise that the Burmese pythons aren't native to America. They were introduced in the 1990s as part of the exotic pet trade. But then, many escaped into the wild, especially infesting the Everglades. And as you can guess, things went downhill from there. Today, there are about 100,000 to 300,000 Burmese pythons in Florida. And you know what the horrifying part is? There's no known predator of this snake in the Everglades. So the snakes live a pretty rich life, going after any prey they want, as if on a free buffet. From birds to mammals and even alligators, no one is safe from these pythons, especially not the smaller animals. Honestly, I was surprised to see that the state saw a 90% decline in native animal populations in the invaded areas. It is not like the state isn't doing anything. Hunters have removed thousands of pythons, but it has done nothing to slow down their numbers. I doubt they will ever have control of these snakes. But who knows what might happen in the future? Just like these pythons, this next invasive species is super dangerous. Number 14.
There's a lot of intense action in this video here. We get the small ones. This guy was clobbered completely.
The lionfish is an absolute menace. It produces 2 million eggs per year. Unbelievable. I know. On top of that, it doesn't have any big predators in its non-native regions. This sweet opportunity has allowed them to thrive in the Atlantic and the Caribbean Oceans. In fact, they have become so comfortable in their new homes that they have killed over 50 different species in the sea. This aggressive feeding habit of the lionfish has decreased the native fish population of the invaded areas by a whopping 80%. It is like they went on a wild rampage. Nations are trying to advertise the fish as a great source of food, even encouraging lionfish hunting tournaments. As much as it sounds like an event from a Disney movie, it is very much real. And surprisingly, it has worked out, but more efforts are still needed to eradicate the threat. But at least people are trying to fight against the lionfish. I think they have given up with this next animal. Number 13. If you want to see chaos incarnate, meet the American bullfrog. When I say it is an invasive species, I mean it's more like a plague. Let me break it down for you. An average female frog can lay up to 2,000 to 5,000 eggs. On the other hand, a female bullfrog lays nearly 20,000 eggs at one time. Yeah, good luck killing that many baby toads. From tadpoles to bullfrogs, the deal's the same. They both are greedy predators that can make any breathing habitat into a WWE arena. But adult bullfrogs are even more horrifying. They can compete directly with birds, reptiles, amphibians, and fish for a limited food supply. The only downside is that the bullfrog is the ultimate winner in almost every battle. But you know what's the worst part? The American bullfrog loves wreaking damage to local ecosystems. Most areas where they were set free showed a 75% decline in the native population of prey species. Things get worse though. There is a deadly disease called the chytrid fungus. This disease alone has wiped out thousands of amphibians around the world. Guess who's the known carrier? Yep, the American bullfrogs. About 80% of the bullfrogs in the invaded areas were known to carry this terrifying disease. That's wild if you ask me, but the looks are the worst. These guys look like they will eat you alive. At least that tells you these guys are bad. I didn't expect anything scary from the next species, thanks to their cuteness. Number 12. Meet the red-eared slider. These guys played a smart trick on humans. They were initially taken along to other parts of the world from the United States and Mexico, simply because they were great pets. But soon things went downhill in a way that you would never expect. When they were introduced into the wild, they started adapting to the habitat. Soon enough, they were everywhere, marking their territory with big numbers. Since the red-eared slider turtles grow fast and eat more, they were forcing the native turtle species to change their habitat. The ones who couldn't even move died battling for food. People got so sick of these turtles that they had to take some strict actions. Several countries like Australia and Japan have put a ban on the import and sale of red-eared slider turtles. Plus, they are regularly hunted for population control. At least, these armored species killers weren't too crafty about their invasion, unlike the next animal on the list. Number 11. You won't believe how these animals invaded Europe. They were brought into Europe intentionally as part of the fur trade. soon after they were roaming wild. That's how their villain origin story started. You see, American minks are carnivorous animals. They had their own sly tactics for capturing prey, and it ended up costing the native animals big time. They had no idea how to deal with such a predator or its wild attacks. As a result, the population of several native animals started declining. I didn't think it was that big a deal until I looked at the numbers. In Europe, water voles suffered the most because of the American minks. In the United Kingdom alone, there was a 90% decline in their population, simply because of these ferocious carnivores. On top of that, minks proved to be a competition to their very own cousins, the European minks. The American minks started a rivalry with these species in the hunt for food, and the two became sworn enemies, as if battling for the Ryder Cup. But the contest didn't last too long. It ended with the European minks becoming a critically endangered species. A battle won, I guess? If you think these are cute, here is a pretty scary-looking species to interest you. Number 10. Imagine an amphibian that kills its predators. I am talking about the cane toads. The idea was to send these toads after sugarcane beetles, animals that were already causing chaos in Australia. But the toads ended up betraying the Australians, and in turn, created a terrifying ecological disaster. To tell you how much this single decision cost the Australians, I will share something that left me stumped too. A small frog population that was introduced back in the 1930s has now exploded into a whopping 200 million. And you know what the crazy part is? The people still haven't figured out how to control them. What's insane to me is that the damage caused by these little guys seems beyond repair, even today. You see, these toads had a lethal weapon by their side. They secrete a toxin that can be fatal to any predator who tries eating them. So, while they haven't been a ferocious predator to the native animals, they have been a tempting prey for the native predators. From northern quoll and the saltwater crocodile to bats and snakes, they all died trying to toads. The quolls bore the brunt of it, witnessing a 70% decline in their population. Hey, I admire the toad's mindset. If it is going down, it is taking everyone down with it. And you have no idea how that ended up shaping the wildlife of the country. It is like hearing the best movie plot ever. But even this wasn't as problematic as the next species on the list. Number 9. Believe it or not, I have a plant in this list too, and it is not as innocent as you might think. Hydrilla is a highly aggressive plant that was introduced into the United States in the 1950s. But it became so problematic and hard to control that the plants eventually invaded North America and then spread out into Europe too. And this thing has surely created havoc wherever it has gone. The thing is that this plant grows an inch every day. In hindsight, it might not seem like a lot, but for the native plant species, they are like monsters taking over their land. Heck, if there's a single stem fragment lying out there somewhere, it will take over the land in months. While that is impressive, or scary depending on how you look at it, that is not why I called Hydrilla the monsters of the plant world. I said that because they form these dense mats that block out both sunlight and oxygen, killing the aquatic plants in a matter of days. It's not like they spread out innocently. No, the reality is far worse. By killing native aquatic plants, they bring in their nasty replacements in the form of harmful algal blooms. Next thing you know, the whole water is toxic and undrinkable for both humans and wildlife. People have tried ripping them apart, but they just grow back. There were also a few fish introduced to eat the Hydrilla, but they weren't the best fix. As a result, the invaded countries now have clogged reservoirs and lakes rendered useless for boating and fishing. It is like watching a sci-fi horror movie gone wrong. Just like this plant, this next invader seems completely innocent at first sight. In reality, it is anything but. Number 8.
The neighbors moved a couple of years ago and she just left her rabbits in the street when she moved. They were not spayed or neutered, so they started multiplying.
Meet bunnies. the species that was introduced to North America as a source of food. But boy, you won't believe how things went south. From a few thousand, these rabbits have gone up to billions in number. And that's not the scary part. You see, these rabbits can turn fields upside down, wreaking havoc on the crops, overgrazing the plants, and leaving the land with a nasty little surprise: soil erosion. It's as bad as it can get. It's hard to believe, I know. I mean, look at these rabbits. Do their cute faces look harmful to you? But that's when I stumbled upon their most successful invasion. The target was Australia. A few hundred rabbits were introduced, and the population exploded to millions within a few years. The result was exponentially destructive, to say the least. The rabbits fed up on vegetation, destroying the land, and putting an end to the plant life there completely. Most areas turned into deserts, leaving the native herbivores dying from hunger. A few plants even went extinct. It was like an apocalypse of its own going on the other side of the world. Australia then had no other choice but to introduce diseases that could harm the rabbits. It gave mixed results. Some of the bunnies became resistant. Others were killed. Eventually, it helped lower their numbers, but it didn't help tone down their bad reputation. Pretty much like the next one on the list. Number 7.
We stomp them, we spray them, but those nasty spotted lanternflies may have finally met their match in a girl from Montgomery County.
These little bugs are lanternflies. They were accidentally introduced to the United States. But unlike me, they knew exactly how to make the most of an opportunity. The spotted lanternfly has just one prey, the crops. It attacks over 50 plant species, but its favorites are the grapevines and apple orchards. That means it goes straight for wine and fruits, one of our major food source. These freaks also attack in huge numbers, and it is no treat. Just ask the vineyards of Pennsylvania. They have suffered the most because of these pests. Their wine industry reported a whopping $1.5 billion loss from the lanternflies. Other vineyards have reported seeing losses of 30 to over 90% in the infested areas. Nations have brought in parasitic wasps from China to help counter the issue, and it has kind of worked in reducing their population. But experts fear that it could grow out of control any day. I fear the same happening with the next animal. Number 6. Zebra mussels came into the United States accidentally. What the country didn't realize back then was how much it would end up costing them today. Ever since these mussels came, they have invaded over 30 states and have forced the U.S. to spend over $500 million annually in damage control. Shocking, right? The thing is that these things like to live in massive colonies near water pipes that eventually block the water source going to the cities. But it is not just the cities that suffer. Zebra mussels can kill beneficial algae, replacing it with harmful algae. This creates a dead zone in the water and turns the water undrinkable for humans. Experts are still trying to figure out how to tackle zebra mussels. And, well, things are not looking hopeful. The next species on our list is another terrifying name for the United States. Number 5. You heard all about Hydrilla being the worst invasive species, but what if I told you it has a solid competitor? The Kudzu. Kudzu was introduced into the United States as an ornamental plant, but how would they know it would turn into a nightmare for the country? You see, this plant can grow up to a foot a day. That's how it became the vine that ate the South. The bad reputation of the Kudzu plant didn't end here, though. It competed with the native plant species, blocking sunlight and taking over their entire habitats. So what was once a diverse habitat turned into a palace for the Kudzu. Since the Kudzu doesn't have any known predators, it basically thrives in these habitats. From power lines to farmlands, nothing is safe from the invasion. The US has tried a lot of methods to control Kudzu's growth, but they still end up spending over $500 million annually to clean them. Even this wild plant is not as wild as the next animal I have on the list. Number 4. The story of the gypsy moths is nothing short of a horror movie. These guys were brought into the United States with the hopes that they will produce silk, but a few of them escaped into the wild and wreaked havoc in the country. Not the adults. Number the caterpillars. They caused so much damage that the country has been forced to spend over $30 million in damage control. Yup, that's a huge number. You see, the gypsy moth caterpillars are terrifyingly aggressive feeders. They can eat over 500 species of plants. Most of the trees die after the moths are done with them. When they are at their peak infestation years, they can turn entire forests into barren lands. It's a serial killer on the loose. I thought that was it, but then I stumbled upon their secret weapon: silk. The gypsy moth caterpillar uses silk threads to hop on from one tree to the other, like an evil Spider-Man. As for controlling these invaders, nothing has worked out as of yet. But here's to hope. Just like this next innocent-looking invader. Number 3. The house sparrow is a pest. Yeah, I am as surprised as you. The house sparrow was introduced to control crop pests. What people didn't expect was for them to become a nationwide nuisance. The thing is that a house sparrow is incredibly territorial. It will not only compete with other species for a limited food supply, but it is also willing to kill for it. The birds have no sense of empathy for any other bird species. They will attack the nesting sites and then have the guts to go after the chicks and eggs, killing them without any remorse. This sinister side of the house sparrow has led a lot of native bird species to flee, and I don't blame them. Eastern bluebird, the purple martin, and the native parrots of Australia have all left their homes because of the terror rained by these sparrows. It is not like they were helpful to humans. The house sparrows go after crops, spread diseases like salmonella, and even cause damage to infrastructure by setting up their nests in random places. Countries are sick of them and trying their best to do damage control. Still, these flying menaces are nothing compared to this next species of invaders. Number 2. Introducing the emerald ash borer. Native to Asia, this animal has now spread to over 30 states of America and is slowly creeping its way into Canada. The emerald ash borer's favorite meal is the ash tree. So far, nearly 100 million of the ash trees have fallen victim to these beetles. But the real nightmare is yet to come. Experts fear that billions more are at risk. The loss of ash trees is like a dent in the economy. The US has lost millions of dollars, especially in the real estate market. It's surprising because the insect itself looks quite pretty. Finally, it's time for our number 1 invader, and I have no shame in admitting that it is my favorite so far. Number 1. What happens when you mix a fish and a snake? You get this fish. The northern snakehead fish is a beast to be reckoned with. For starters, this fish can survive in a low oxygen environment. They have a lung-like organ that allows them to breathe on land. As much as that impressed me, I couldn't help but feel horrified for the countries that it has invaded. This secret superpower allows the fish to live almost anywhere. Heck, it could survive even where most fishes can't, already giving it an edge over the native fish populations. I mean, no sane fish would go against Captain America, right? Northern snakeheads are also very aggressive feeders, and they are a known apex predator. They can go after fish, amphibians, crustaceans, and even small birds and mammals. On top of that, they do not have any known predators in the United States, allowing them to hop from one water body to the next without any fear. An absolute menace, to say the least. That's all, folks. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button, hit subscribe, and stay tuned for the next one. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.